Good evening and greetings. My name is Brother Omari Fennell. I am the second vice basileus of Psi Iota chapter located in Dover, Delaware. Psi Iota chapter was founded in November of 1946. We are a graduate chapter in the state of Delaware, and we are in the second corridor, Corridor 2, and we are under the mighty second district of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Today, we're coming to you to talk to you about a real important issue, one that is close to each and one of our hearts, one that is may have affected you, may have affected someone that you know, a family member. And we just wanted to just bring this subject to light. And what that is suicide awareness and prevention. Suicide Awareness Month is in the month of September, and the week that it is recognized is the 4th through the 10th. And so the gentleman that I have here before me and on this panel today, we thought it might be more than just doing something more than just for a week to talk about with this importance. We felt, especially in this world today, that we wanted to focus on this issue and have a candid discussion as brothers and as African-American men. Our goal tonight is to inform and engage health professionals and the general public about suicide prevention and the warning signs of suicides. You know, we think about our children, our teens, our veterans, and even people of color. We all go through, we've all seen or heard of someone go through suicide and just go through mental health struggles. So today we'll hear a personal testimony from one of my guests, Brother Brothers Nowell, on his struggle and how he continues to persevere in dealing with mental health and suicide. We hope to discuss the signs and symptoms of someone thinking about hurting themselves and risking their lives. We also want to talk about what ways can we prevent ourselves or someone we know from wanting to go down this path. We can hope to, at the end, provide sources for anyone who may be in need of assistance and searching for help. And ultimately, we want to be able to better understand, monitor, and prevent suicide and suicidal behavior. So brothers, before we get started, I just wanted to put a couple of facts out there. I received some facts from the Centers of Disease Control, the CDC. And some of the facts state that suicide is the leading cause of death in the United States, with about 45,979,000 deaths in 2020. This is about one death every 11 minutes. In 2020, there was an estimated 12.2 million American adults seriously thought about suicide, while 3.2 million planned a suicide attempt and 1.2 million attempted suicide. In the state of Delaware, where we are, the suicide rate is about 12.3%, or approximately 124 incidents per year. So we know that this is something that affects and impacts folks of all different shades, ethnicities, race, all different backgrounds. And so we felt that this was going to be an important subject matter to bring to you all today. Before we get into the stories, I want to allow the guests that I have here today to introduce themselves as far as who they are and what they'll talk about today. Brother Chris Hampton, I have here. Could you talk to the audience about who you are, your background, and what you do for a living?
Sure. My name is Christopher Hampton, Brother Christopher Hampton. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field for 31 years at this time. I primarily, over my years of experience, work with children and families. I work for an local agency here in the state of Delaware. And I also have a private practice where I see individuals, families, and groups as well. A lot of emphasis on attention deficit disorder, depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicidal ideation. Yeah, that's kind of my story. And I hope that I can bring, some knowledge here to the table tonight.
Thank you, Brother Hampton. I do appreciate that intro. Brother Corey Newell, can you also talk to the audience about who you are, your background, and what you do for a living? And then we're going to go ahead and I'll just allow you to go ahead and provide your testimony to the audience tonight.
Absolutely. I'm Brother Corey Nowell. I've been active duty Air Force for 18 years, currently stationed at Dover Air Force Base. This is my 7th duty assignment. I'm currently a full-time additional duty first sergeant, in which my job is taking care of a unit of about 521 personnel. I oversee operations, not necessarily operations, I oversee operations on behalf of the commander per se. And I'm pretty much her direct link to the unit, and then vice versa from the unit to her. So any problems need to be worked, whether it's people having marital issues, suicidal ideations, financial issues, or even on a positive note, people getting assignments and need information on it, or promotions and education. I also have a heavy hand in that as well. And that's pretty much, what I do at Dover Air Force Base. As far as my story, I know there was a link that was put on Facebook by the Air Force Base. Public Affairs had reached out to me, and I was asked to speak to this base about struggles I've had in the past with suicide ideations and even plans and attempts. And what I'll do is I'll give the short version. If people want the longer version, they can definitely check it out on the Dover Air Force base page, or I could send you the link and then you can get it out to them later. And because it has both of my articles on there. But for me, I'm a happy-go-lucky person. A lot of people know who I am. I'm very active in the community. So for me, I'm always smiling, always happy. So when I had my battle with suicidal ideations due to my depression and anxiety and other external factors that were going on, which I'll get into in a second, I was kind of able to identify after the fact. It was almost kind of like looking in the rearview mirror. I was able to look after the fact that all of the signs, they kind of drove me towards trying to attempt, taking my life at one point. And, I'll backtrack and I'll start there. So, earlier around like 2009, I was having some marital issues with my ex-wife. I was dealing with some issues at work. But the issues at work kind of had compounded. I'd already got in trouble like years previous. So in 2007, I got in trouble. I got an Article 15. Not gonna go into the details of that, but long story short, the Air Force took 2 stripes off of me. I ended up getting those 2 stripes back. And that was just solely off of just hard work. I felt like I made a mistake. I owed a debt to the Air Force and to society. So what I did was I did 45 days of extra duty, hard time, 12-hour shifts, no days off. And whether they had me mopping floors, painting lawns, picking up cigarettes, I was the best at doing it. I put my best foot forward. I wanted to show them that, hey, this is what I'm here to do. I'm going to put my best foot forward, and, we're going to progress. So during that time, my career was looking pretty grim. Like, dang, like, am I going to be able to continue on in the Air Force? Or once my enlistment come up, will I be denied enlistment based on, my substandard behavior? It was never an issue for me at work. All my issues always stemmed off duty. It stemmed from the people I was hanging around, the relationships I had, the people I had near me. And that's kind of what would eventually kind of be a driving force into some of the other stresses that will come along. So right away, I've already kind of told you guys the work stressor. And then from the personal standpoint, you fast forward to 2009, here I am, I'm married, having some marital issues. My ex-wife had multiple miscarriages. There was a bit of a strain because my ex-wife is actually Canadian, but her family's from India. So for me, it was a cultural strain because, they do arranged marriages. You don't date or marry outside your race. And then on her side, it was fears of being disowned by her parents. So A lot of stuff was kind of done in secrecy. She didn't really share a whole lot. And then one day we popped up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And, you know, her dad just broke down in tears because he already kind of knew she ain't bringing nobody here unless she's married to him. So that was interesting. And, but, you know, things got cool. You know, we ended up, you know, getting some stuff together, you know, working some things out. And everything seemed to have been like on the up and up. Fast forward, I took a deployment, went on a deployment. Everything was pretty good for the most part on the deployment, but I was dealing with some toxic leadership. Again, another workplace issue, dealing with some toxic leadership, reported them, did everything I was supposed to do up the chain of command. Come back. Now we are in probably closer to the end of 2010. Everything it seems like it's moving along great. We going in 2011. Things are still kind of okay, moving along great. And then around like January, that's when there was an issue of pretty much they was changing my work center. They was putting me somewhere else because that's where they needed me at. It was a work center I really didn't want to go to because I had conflict with another person that was over there who had kind of had a hand previously. And what I felt stifled my progress for the sake of theirs for rank. So anyway, I had to deal with that, go to the new work center. And then me and the ex-wife, again, start having more marital issues. Again, this was centered around pregnancy and stuff like that. And at this point, I was at the point where I was ready to kind of unplug because it was just like, all right, like this is just not working. So we're gonna do what we gotta do. So I'm get myself out of this situation. And while I'm going through the motions of dealing with that stuff, I get a phone call. My cousin's on the phone, and she's just like, "Hey, they rushing grandma to the hospital." And for those who don't know, my grandmother raised me. And like I said, I omitted a lot to this for the sake of time, but my grandmother raised me. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm like, is she all right? And she was like, no, I don't know. So you might want to get her. So I was living in Shreveport, Louisiana. I went in. First off, I packed the bag, threw it in my car. Went into my office and I talked to my boss and I said, hey man, my grandma just had a stroke. That's what they telling me. I'm out. Y'all can do my leave paperwork and all that when I get back. Like, I don't care about doing none of that right now. And so he was like, okay, we'll take care of you. Do what you got to do. I hopped on the road. What should have been an 8-hour drive, I think I turned into probably a 6.5 hour drive. I got there fairly quick. Got to the hospital. The chatter was, oh, she's unresponsive. She's not really, responding, whatever. And it was almost like the minute I walked through the door, it was almost as if she knew I was there because, she started moving her leg. She started trying to talk. And I'm like, no, grandma, you don't need to talk. You need to relax. You need to rest. You're going to be okay. And I just said, and I talked to her. And I said, hey, I'm here. You good? Your right-hand man, I'm here, So we talked to her and, everything was, good, held her hand, talked to her and stuff. And then the doctor comes in. He's like, a couple hours later, the doctor comes in and he's basically like, well, we don't know what much more we can do, for her. So we're going to put her on hospice. Me never having to deal with somebody like being terminal or anything like that, I had no idea what that meant. But how he made it seem was she was going to go to like a little rehab center and then she should be good. I didn't really understand the full scope of like hospice and what it really entailed until I researched it. And so I'm sitting there looking on the phone and I'm reading. So I tell the doctor, I'm like, so because she old, like, y'all don't want to try? Like, she wasn't really old. My grandma was like in her mid-70s. I'm like, she's an elderly woman, so y'all don't want to try. If this was a younger person, I'm pretty sure y'all would try a lot harder than what y'all doing. The doctor pretty much was trying to explain it. I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear it. I got a VIP escort by Atlanta PD. They escorted me out of the hospital. I'm not gonna name the hospital. They escorted me out of that particular facility. Told me to cool down and I could come back the next day. And so that was on a Friday. I ended up leaving on a Monday to go back to Shreveport because I had to get back to work. And as a matter of fact, by that time she was talking and she's like, I'm okay. You need to go back to work. That's what she was telling me. I'm okay. You need to go back to work. You good. And her last words was, don't get in no more trouble. don't be up there giving people no problems, because when I had got in trouble previously, everything they were saying to me, none of it really stuck. I wasn't really like being receptive or listening to anything they were saying. But when they said, hey, we'll call your grandma, we'll put her on the phone, I kind of changed my entire demeanor. It was different, right, because that was the only person I would listen to. And it was just like, nah, you don't need to call her. We good. And I get back to Shreveport, and then that was on that Monday. And that Thursday, because it was a couple of days, I've been calling, checking in on her. They said she was good. That Thursday, my uncle called me at probably about, because I was an hour behind in Shreveport, so it had to be like midnight, like Georgia time. And he was like, hey man, grandma done checked out. She didn't make it. And I kind of like, I don't know, I kind of like lost it. Like, it was just one of those things, like, I was beside myself. It was just like, this can't be real. Like, this can't be serious. The one and only person who ever really believed in me and, trusted in my ability to be somebody in this cruel world, is now going away. Now I have nobody else. And despite having other family members, this ain't no disrespect to them or to any of my friends, anything like that. But I just always felt like my grandma was the only person who really understood me. Nobody else in my life, I don't think, ever like understood like who I am as a person, or understood me, especially based on the circumstances in which she got custody. So I think she understood like who I am. And then from her own accounts of going through trauma and just living through, certain things, we were just super close. So I was, it was, everything was kind of like a blur. Like, it was all right, man, yeah, this is crazy, but whatever. So I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety, depressive symptoms, in which I went to the medical group, got help, and they told me they diagnosed me with an unspecified depressive disorder and anxiety. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what I said. I got. So, they threw me on some pills and stuff. I started taking them. I stopped taking them. I was like, I'm not taking this no more. I'm cool. Like, I'm good. Well, then November strike. And then my aunt passed away. And my aunt actually was one of the people who helped raise me. So she was in the same house. So my aunt literally died like within like 5 months of my grandma. Unbeknownst to me, my aunt had been dealing with lung cancer. I didn't know. My uncle, they didn't tell me or my cousin. They didn't tell us anything. My aunt really didn't want us to know, because they didn't want us to worry. And so go back to Atlanta, go to that funeral. And where I thought I kind of had it together, it was kind of like, okay, because there was already one urn on the table. And when I had to see the other urn, that was when it hit me like, damn, man, everybody I'm loved, like, like dying around me. And I was just like, well, it's crazy. My grandma in heaven, well, I want to go to heaven too. So I went out on the balcony. I grabbed one of my firearms, took it, I cocked it, put it to my chest the first time, pulled the trigger, and it jammed. And I'm like, damn, this is crazy. Okay. So I took it, put it in the air. Actually, I took the bullets. I took everything out. I completely cleared it out, like how they teach you in the military, everything. Put the magazine back in, cocked it, put it up in the air, squeezed, and then boom, it went off. So in my mind, all right, cool. Now it's time. Now it's time to do it. So put it back to my head, put it to my head at this point, pull the trigger, and then it's a loud click. So that was the second click. I'm like, all right, that's weird. So I had another firearm. I went and grabbed that one. And this one probably hadn't been fired in like some time, like probably a while, like a couple years before I had even used it before. We even went to the range with it. But, I could take care of my weapons. So I figured, okay, like this one should be good. First thing first, took it, put it in the air, just wanted to make sure it worked. A round came off. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm good. This time, put it back to my chest, pull the trigger, loud click. So I was like the third click, and I'm thinking like, man, what the hell is going on? And at that point, the gun actually jammed. Like the round was trying to feed, but it just didn't go. It just didn't cycle all the way. You know what I mean? So I was saying like, man, what the fuck? All right, the first gun, excuse my language. I was like, yo, what the hell? The first gun, like, just didn't work and didn't do what it wanted to do. The second one, it just jammed. After I fired the shot first. And so I kind of just broke down. My ex-wife came in. She called crisis. They escorted me to a place called Brentwood, which is like a mental health facility. Got in there. The staff was pretty nice, but they took anything that had strings on it, man, shoestrings, belt, everything, anything that had strings on it, like they took it
Mhm.
or whatnot. They had me in this room, and then basically I went through some intensive outpatient therapy after being released from Brentwood. I was up there for about 2 weeks. After being released from Brentwood, I ended up, like I said, doing the intensive outpatient therapy. And then from there was kind of where I started to realize like I had a true purpose, like for living, because I was coaching kids in the local neighborhood, and it was actually it's kids who grew up the same way I grew up. They didn't have their parents. They didn't have. They were raised by either an aunt or a single grandparent or something like that. So I focused a lot of my, or I had already been focusing a lot of my attention working with those kids who needed that extra help because they didn't have it, you know. And ultimately, once I got myself in a place where I was like really grounded, what I started to do was I started to do outreach on my own for like mental health awareness. Even working with the kids, I will pop up in my military uniform. I'll pop up. I would go to their school to make sure that they were in class. And for the ones who were in class, good on them. The ones who weren't, you know, there was consequences for that, you know. And we went, you know, and we dealt with that, you know, as coaches, you know, on the football, you know, baseball and basketball aspect, because those were the sports I coached. And you know, as I've moved forward, you know, since then in my situation, you know, I've lost a couple of airmen to suicide since I've been in the Air Force. And what it did was it reinforced to me the amount of pain that I would have put my family through, just seeing, you know, them and the pain that these people parents were going through, and their sisters and brothers and their, you know, their other family members and stuff. And I think the one that hit me the hardest was actually last year. We lost one of the airmen, and I was appointed as the family assistance representative, in which where like I helped his parents do everything. I helped him do the funeral arrangements. I helped pack up his house, his apartment. Like that really hit me. And then spending time with the kid family, that's their last name, with the kid family, spending time with them made me realize, in talking to them, it was weird. It was like they lost a son, but they kind of gained one, like in me. Yeah. Because of like the proximity and how close that relationship is and how significant, you know, that relationship is. So what I tell people is, when you're struggling, sometimes it's easy to mask it. I think we all have what's called a suicidal ideation at times. And suicidal ideations are simply thoughts. And they can be simple thoughts, like you get mad at your parents, you know, for the teenagers, and you think, oh, I'm better off not being here. Or, you know, or you saying stuff like, oh, I wish I was dead, or stuff like that. Like, even if it is to get a reaction out of somebody, that's still a suicidal ideation. Now, whether you make a plan and act on it is different. But, you know, we got to be cognizant of, you know, the things and the people we surround ourselves with, the amount of stress that we have in our lives, and the form of self-care. You know, I urge people, whether you feel like you have suicidal ideations or not, I urge people to find some type of self-care. If you like to read a book. If you like to watch a show, travel, listen to music, dance, like whatever your vice is that brings you joy, that's a form of self-care. It's not always going out and getting a massage. It's not always doing something extravagant. Sometimes self-care is as simple as using the biggest word in the dictionary, and that's saying no to people. A lot of times when you're always there for other people, who's there for the strong person? Nobody knew I was struggling. I've always been the strong friend. I've always been the person that people lean on. Nobody knew I was struggling.
Right.
Nobody knew what I had going on. So it would have been a complete surprise had I would have succeeded, because then people were like, what in the world? Like Champ, like Brothers Nowell, of all people, him? Like, ain't no way. It would have been a complete surprise, but that's usually when it happens. And when those feelings of despair set in, it's one thing to be angry. It's one thing to be sad. It's one thing to be depressed. One thing to be anxious. All of those are okay emotions, because you're allowed to have a bad day. I tell people that all the time. We get so caught up in telling people, oh, no, don't have a bad day. Go do this, go do that. No, you're allowed to have a bad day every once in a while. That's your right. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to cry, all of that stuff. Express those emotions, because I suppressed all of mine. And I ended, you know, on the other side of the dirt, because I wouldn't express how I felt about things, you know, and so forth. So with all that being said, if you find yourself feeling any type of way, having suicidal ideations, feeling suicidal, that you created a plan or something that you might try to act on or whatever, reach out to somebody who you can trust, and somebody that you know is going to listen to you. Take that time to talk to that person. Also, in addition to exercising the self-care, Chris is going to give you guys the resources, or a couple of resources in the community that you guys can use. Use the resources available. They got a crisis, they got a hotline, use that stuff. But for the people around that are the sensors, for people who may be dealing with suicidal ideations or issues like that, it literally takes a couple minutes to close the one hole and open the other two holes that you have in your body, which closing your mouth, open your ears. It is super simple to literally sit there and listen, not with the intent to give a solution, but literally listen with empathy to understand where that person is coming from and to understand where they are at. It's also not a time to express that you feel sorry for that person, because we don't want sympathy. That's not how it works. Nobody wants sympathy. People want to kill themselves. They don't want sympathy. Now, some people do require and they want attention. But as far as wanting sympathy, that's not something that they're looking for. So just be that sounding board, and ask the questions of, okay, so now that you feel this way, all right, what are you planning on doing next? Ask the tough questions. Do you plan on hurting yourself or hurting anybody else? You have to ask the tough questions. I think that people now, but I promise you, if you ask the tough questions, and I've had to do it recently in the last couple of months to a few different people, and whenever I ask those tough questions and I've gotten that yes, it's no situation. You don't have to go into panic. You don't have to do none of that. You simply say, okay, I understand. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can get you some help. And at that point, you either escort them to the nearest emergency room or you get them to a mental health facility, depending on whatever your job is. You take them and you get them evaluated. And what you do is, you consistently check on them and stuff like that. You don't treat them like a prisoner. Like the things that people would think to do, those are not really things you do. You don't be on them or have a guard on them 24/7. No, you don't need that. Right. Because of the day, now that you've given that attention to them and you followed up, they know that somebody truly cares. And the acronym is ACE, Ask, Care, Escort. You know what I mean? And then, in my final words, I did in this last article on paper, I wrote doing your life what will live forever. So that basically means do the things that you want people to remember you by. And, if you are a person that you go out your way to help other people and that's what you want people to remember you by, then live up to those standards. Just know if people are relying on you, it's not an option to hurt or harm yourself, because these other people are relying on you to help them, and vice versa, for them to pour and to feed into you. Another thing is, a lot of times when people get in trouble or things happen, whether this is in the military, the civilian sector, whatever it is, mistakes happen. All right. Bad decisions also happen. Okay. With that being said, whether a person make a mistake or whether they make a bad decision, don't write them off. Be there to support that person. Be there to uplift that person, because at some point you probably made a mistake or made a bad decision. You just didn't get caught. That's really the difference. So don't criminalize other people, because none of us are perfect. And all you can do is you climb to continue to lift those people up. And that's pretty much, it. I mean, that's my story. Like I said, that's the short version of the story. With the details just outlining some of the significant issues that people face, i.e. relationships, family problems. Mine wasn't really any type of alcohol or drug abuse. Some people have alcohol abuse issues, or drug abuse issues that drive them to suicidal ideations. Finances is another one, but relationships is hands down like the number one problem. And domestic abuse goes both ways. It's not just man on woman, it's woman on man. It goes both ways. And I've even interacted with some men who have had suicidal ideation because they felt weak because they were being abused by their female spouse. And they felt like they had nobody to turn to. They couldn't report it. They didn't want to be perceived as weak, and that despair set in. So I yield my time, and I'll provide you the link after this is over with, so you can get that out, attach it to whatever you have.
I appreciate that, Brother Newell, for that story. And I actually we will ask some questions before we get with Brother Hampton. As you've just heard a powerful testimony, a powerful story from Brother Corey Newell about his experience. There, to me, I mean, this story just really it really strikes a chord, and just really brings a one word, just perseverance. Everything that you had gone through, you were still able to work through that. Even, like you said, the loss of, close family members, that really, meant something to you, within your family. Those were like those were things that happened to you, that, kind of led you down this road or caused you to go down this road. And a few notes you had here, I think it's ACE. You said ask, care, escort.
Yep.
I think that's a phenomenal, acronym, phenomenal way to be able to, figure out how can I help somebody, because we don't want to be in that position, but we never know. We may be in that position where we might have to help someone, and we're the only ones that are there around to help them. And that second thing you said, do things you want people to remember you by as well. So I just thought those were extremely great nuggets, just things that resonated with me through your story. What I like to do is also bring Brother Christopher Hampton in, to get a perspective from a professional side of the house. I know you have some things to share with us as well, with respect to suicide awareness and prevention. And so I'd like for you to, provide some insight that you can
Sure.
on this matter as well.
Sure. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about suicidal ideation. And Brother Nowell made some excellent points with regard to suicidal ideation. You have two types. You have passive and you have active. So the passive type is that type that Corey, that Brother Nowell was talking about. You wake up in the morning, you're not feeling well. You might want to talk about or think about wanting to harm yourself in some type of way of fashion. Really just not wanting to be here, but not necessarily having a plan to do so. Now, Brother Nowell's story, he had a plan. He had a plan and he acted on that plan. So that was more of the active side of suicidal ideation. I thank God that your plan didn't work out, because your story is powerful and it's going to help a lot of people. And you have purpose in this world today. I know you have children.
Yes, sir.
You have a lovely wife, and you have a lovely family all together. And thank God that those guns jammed. So, but yes, suicidal ideation is really a broad term that talks about preoccupation of death, suicide, or dying. Okay. Some of the warning signs with regard to suicidal ideation is people talking about wanting to die, having great guilt or shame, feeling like you're being a burden to others. Okay. Feelings of hopelessness, feeling empty on the inside, trapped, having no reason to live, extremely sad, anxious, as Brother Nowell talked about, feeling down, agitated, full of rage at times, and just having a lot of emotional and physical pain.
So, Brother Hampton, let me ask you this, because a lot of what you just stated, I mean, just as a regular human being, I think we do experience those types of things just on a it could be a day to day, or we run into those problems or those types of feelings. So I mean, how can we distinguish that, having those feelings, and then I guess having an understanding of not taking it to a place where it's a dark place, and then maybe trying to turn that around and look more into a positive light, and possibly talking to someone.
I think a lot of it goes back to what Brother Noel was talking about, self-care.
Mhm.
You have to have ways that you take care of yourself in a positive light. Exercising, reading, as Brother Noel said, dancing, enjoying people, talking with people, communicating with people, educating yourself. Big things, big things. This whole thing about awareness, communicating, understanding that this whole idea of stigma behind depression and anxiety and suicide, those are words,
Mhm.
right? And you know we get tied up in those big words and we don't want to talk about it, and it makes us feel bad.
Right.
But the more we talk about it, the more we expose it, the more we take that stigmatism away, and we allow for communication and education. It kind of helps us along the way of making better choices about life.
Yeah, I think you made an important note there. You talked about like the stigma. And I know with, people of color, especially, African Americans, we tend to kind of have this or have had this stigma of wanting to, seek help or really be unwilling to have self-acceptance that, you may have a problem, and may need to seek, some type of professional help. And a lot of times I think, we in the past or, and even now, we ignore that at times. We just have this sometimes a machismo, uh, you know, thought process and like I'm good,
Mhm.
I might, let it pass by. I'm just bulletproof or whatever.
Right,
But at the same time, you still have these things that you have built up in inside of you, and you don't
right.
necessarily get those things out, and it builds and it builds and it builds up until it gets to a point where you're it's out of control and you can't, you need help. You don't have anything to do. So, I feel like that's definitely something that affects our communities, definitely
Absolutely.
person of color as well. But I just felt like that was definitely something, that you touched on that really resonated with me as well.
And there's also something about feeling inferior,
Mhm.
and feeling vulnerable. When you expose yourself, you're allowing a lot of people to, really get to know how you really true feeling on the inside. And we as Black people, we've always, you know, put our best defense first.
Mm.
And in our minds, and putting our best defense first, we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where we might be vulnerable.
Right.
you know but if we can desensitize that sense of thinking and think more about, what, I need help, I need to figure out how to get that help, I need to start communicating with people, I need to educate myself a little bit better, I need to, provide self-care to myself, I need to surround myself with good people that are good for me. you know um that definitely helps. And I would encourage other people, because it's more than just you, because people see things in you and they kind of know when you're feeling down, but you're the person that says, no, I'm okay.
Right.
Right? You're the person that always says, no, I'm okay. So, I would encourage our friends, our family members to talk to us. I would encourage, you know, our friends and our families to help us look for resources that may be helpful to us. I would encourage our friends and our families to say, you know what, I I hear what you're saying. I hear exactly what you're saying, but I'm making a call because I know you're not okay.
Mm.
I know you're not okay. Um,
So touching on that, can you, and I know Corey kind of touched on a few things just through his testimony, what can we do? And I know many of we're parents, right? What are the warning signs? We just want to know what other type of things can we look out for, from a parental perspective, but also just from, a person that I may know through my work or just do personally? What types of
Right.
things we do to, kind
Well,
of,
number one, people doing reckless things, right? Um, Planning, research, and dying, you know, um, people that take risks like driving really fast, um, extreme mood swings.
Mhm.
With children, a lot of times they may have, disruptive behaviors, or they may, and this is with adults too, they may, not necessarily just to shelter away and not want to be around people,
Right.
right? Um, Not having appetites or eating too much, changes drastically one way or another.
Hmm.
Um, and also just not wanting to be around other people, you know, not wanting to be around other people.
And I find that interesting, with the with the pandemic, right? And our children, we have young children, we have small children. Well, I don't want to say I have small children, but you
Mhm.
know, they're teens, and they had to go through the pandemic, and they had to go through. We all went through a situation where we were inside. You know,
Mhm.
we weren't we weren't able to go outside and interact. Have that person to person contact a lot of times. And so, I'm sure that in some way that has impacted the way that, some people interact socially,
Mhm.
um, and possibly have had some impact on how people, just react to certain things. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the pandemic, it really, put people in like a sheltered position because
Mhm.
everybody was home.
Right.
Right? Everybody was scared to go out. Everybody was scared to be around people, and then reintroducing, COVID is still here, but it's not a pandemic, right? So reintroducing people back into society is almost like, in the school that I work in now, we had, I guess the pandemic was 2 years, right? It's
Right.
just about 2 years. Well, at least 2 school years.
Hmm.
So we had in our elementary school, we had kids that would have been in kindergarten but didn't come to school until third grade,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
So they missed all of the social development years, and they came in third grade with a kindergarten mindset
Mm-hmm.
because they had not been around other children.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just thinking about that in mind, you know, we have to really work to kind of prepare them to be socially accepted, and this whole idea of being socially acceptable, and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, we're still working on that now.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, it was just something that, I couldn't imagine just being in that position as a young child or as a parent having to deal with that, because I know it's totally different, different, something
mhm.
a challenge to kind of get through. Um,
And then the whole idea of wearing masks.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a whole nother thing, in that, you know, try to have a kindergarten and wear a mask all day,
Right.
you know. And then the flip side of wearing the mask now is not required, but people are scared. Well, if I don't wear it, I may catch COVID,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of sort of plays into this whole idea of depression and being anxious, and not necessarily suicidal ideation, but one thing can lead to another thing. One
Right.
thing can lead you down a dark path.
Right.
But I think the whole thing is, that we have to think about is taking that stigma away. and really working on communication and educating ourselves in self-care. Those things are very important, and being in tune with our body, and really having good people around us.
Absolutely. I think that's key. You definitely got to have good karma, just a good vibe, a good aura around you, just good people, positive people that are going to that are going to invest positive things in you. Corey, I want to kind of swing back to you with respect to the military community
Mhm.
and our veterans. The CDC has a fact that says veterans have an adjusted suicide rate that is 52.3% greater than the non-veteran U.S. adult population. And it goes on to say that people who have previously served in the military account for about 13.7 of suicides among adults in the United States. So, what can we do, I guess, from being in the military, which I was as well, having that transition, from being in the military to getting outside into, we say the civilian world. What types of things can we do to help folks that may be going through something and they may be going through a transition, from the military out to the outside world?
I've always said we need more veteran outreach, more veteran support programs. Something that could potentially be done is, we have a bunch of VFWs like everywhere, right? And I know some VFWs do throw events for veterans and to help out towards veterans' mental health and things of that nature. It's just really about just being present and aware, just knowing, if you got veterans around you, for who you know personally, is reaching out, make sure you're doing that safety check on them, making sure they're okay, because transitioning from the military back into the civilian sector can be very, very challenging for some people. You've pretty much been institutionalized to live a certain type of way for X number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you go back into society and be like everybody else. In retrospect, it's no different than people that go to prison and they reoffend to go back to prison. But you can't really reoffend to go back. You can't do nothing to get back into the military. Once you out, you out.
Right.
So my suggestion would be, just outreach programs, even with the VA, the Department of Veteran Affairs, the VFWs, any local nonprofit organizations that are veteran based. You got Mission 22. They're a good outlet. They're a good company. They do a lot for like the veterans and stuff. Wounded Warrior Project for the disabled vets. Getting vets in tune and in contact with them. Military One Source, they also handle veterans and active duty. So people can reach out to Military One Source if they need an outlet or they need the extra or additional support that they can't get from somebody that they know personally. But there are tons of programs out there like Mission 22, like I said, the Wounded Warrior Project, and then what's the last one? I just gave it to you. Excuse, he charged in my head, not my heart.
All right.
I can piggyback off that and just give you some hotline numbers and things of that nature. I mean, the number one is 911, right? The number two is 988. Actually, 988 is probably the number one, and 911 is number two. So I believe 988 is directed to suicide hotline.
Yes.
Okay. And that's across the the whole United States. But here in Delaware, you have Kent and Sussex Mobile Crisis. That number is 1-800-345-6785. Again, 1-800-345-6785, and that's Kent Sussex Mobile Crisis Unit. In Wilmington, you have Contact Delaware, which is 1-800-262-9800. Again, 1-800-262-9800. And then you have the Mobile Crisis Intervention Service that covers the whole state. That number is 1-800-652-2929. Again, 1-800-652-2929. And then we have the Brandywine Program, Trustless Center of Delaware. That number is 302-633-5787. 5128. Again, 302-633-5128. And then we have the 1-800-SUICIDE number, and that is 1-800-784-2433. 1-800-784-2433. And the military veterans line, as Brother Nowell was talking about, suicide hotline is 1-800-273-TALK. And then there's also a Spanish speaking suicide line, and that's 1-800. Actually, it's the same number, 273-TALK. You press the number 2, and you'll get a Spanish person to talk with. So,
we definitely appreciate that, and we're hoping that that our listeners and the audience out there, that they can use these useful tools and resources to reach out, to know that someone out there does care about you, that your life is worth something, and there are tools for you to be able to get the help and support that you need, because even one life gone is too much. Definitely suicide. So talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to those folks that you may not have heard from in a while, just to check on them, make sure that they're doing okay. Even just a quick pick up of the phone to hear somebody else's voice, or a quick text, can you possibly save someone's life. And so, Brother Chris Hampton, Brother Corey Nowell, I want to thank you both, for taking this time out to have this discussion. Brother Nowell, thank you very much for your just your transparency and just your telling your story, because this is going to be something that can save someone's life. It can save someone's life. So, we definitely take this extremely serious. This is a serious matter. And, we want to make sure that everybody can live the life that they should live. Everybody should be able to live a full, healthy, life and enjoy life, through their family and friends. So with that, brothers, I just want to say thank you for your time. This will conclude our session with regards to suicide prevention and awareness, a candid discussion with the brothers. And I'll leave you with this, brothers. And I'll just say that, the change you want to see begins with you, so be that change. It starts with you. So if you go out there, you want to see something change, it's got to start with you. You got to be the one that believes in yourself the most, more than anybody else believes in you. You should believe in yourself more than anyone else believes in you. So with that, brothers, I want to say thank you again. I want to say good night, and we'll definitely continue having these discussions, important discussions that, impact, our local state and our country, in the world. So I think having discussions like this, especially as Black men, we need to get this out. We need to be able to talk and talk about, these matters and these issues. So with that, brothers, I want to say thank you. To the audience, I want to say thank you for listening. And we'll be stay tuned for our next candid session with the brothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Fennell. Thank you.
Thank you.